Every religion has a birthplace. Silicon Valley's is a one-car garage at 367 Addison Avenue, Palo Alto. In 1938, two Stanford classmates started a company there with $538. Their first real customer was Walt Disney, who used their machine to make Fantasia. For 60 years, that company was the conscience of American technology. Its management philosophy had a name, the HP Way, and founders from Steve Jobs on down treated it like scripture. And then that same company hired private investigators to impersonate its own board members and 9 journalists. It burned through CEOs like printer cartridges. It wrote off $8.8 billion, accusing a business partner of fraud, and fought his estate for more than a decade, past the day he drowned. No rival did this to Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard did this to Hewlett-Packard. This is the rise and fall of Hewlett-Packard, the company that built Silicon Valley and then dismantled itself. It started, fittingly, with a coin flip. In 1938, Bill Hewlett and David Packard, Stanford classmates, engineers, friends, began working part-time out of a rented garage behind a house on Addison Avenue, with an initial capital investment of $538. On January 1, 1939, they formalized the partnership and tossed a coin to decide the name. Hewlett-Packard, or Packard-Hewlett. Hewlett won the toss. Hold on to that image. Two founders so equal, so aligned, that the order of their names was left to chance. 63 years later, another coin flip vote would decide this company's fate, and nobody involved would be smiling. Their first product was a resistance-capacity audio oscillator, built on Hewlett's graduate work at Stanford. Walt Disney Studios bought it to produce Fantasia. Think about that for a second. The very first thing Hewlett-Packard ever sold went straight into a masterpiece. By 1940, with 2 employees, they'd outgrown the garage and moved to new headquarters on Palo Alto's Page Mill Road. What they built over the next 4 decades wasn't just a company. It was a culture. And the culture had a name: the HP Way. Employee First Management, embodied personally by the 2 founders. Trust your engineers. Share the profits. Walk the floor. After serving as an Army officer in World War II, Hewlett came back and ran the place himself. President from 1964 to 1977. Chief executive from 1969 to 1978. This was a company managed by the men whose names were on the door, and it showed. In an industry that would become famous for burning people out and tossing them aside, HP was the place your parents wanted you to work. And the gentle culture printed ferocious numbers. By 1985, sales reached $6.5 billion, with 85,000 employees around the world. In 1987, the state of California made it official. The garage on Addison Avenue was designated a California Historical Landmark, the birthplace of Silicon Valley. The myth was now literally bolted to the wall. Then the founders started to die. David Packard went first, on March 26, 1996. Bill Hewlett followed in 2001. And here is the hinge of this entire story. Both men died before the worst of what was coming. They never saw the spying scandal, the write-downs, the proxy war fought in their sons' names. They left behind a company at the top of its industry, a philosophy with their fingerprints on it, and a board that was about to decide the philosophy was the problem. By 1999, the boardroom consensus was that Hewlett-Packard had a personality problem. Next to Dell and Cisco, HP looked stodgy, an engineering company in a marketing decade. The stagnation was real, and the board's response was rational, defensible, and fateful. Don't fix the culture from inside. Hire a star. In July 1999, HP appointed Carly Fiorina, the first female CEO of a Fortune 20 company, in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a celebrity hire brought in explicitly to modernize the image and the brand. That same year, everything not related to computers, storage, and imaging was spun off to form Agilent Technologies, the largest IPO in Silicon Valley history, creating an $8 billion company. Read that carefully. The test and measurement business, the oscillator business, the garage business, was the part that got cut loose. The original Hewlett-Packard left the building in year 1. Then came the bet. In September 2001, Fiorina announced HP would acquire Compaq, a massive doubling down on personal computers just as PCs were commoditizing into oblivion. Her logic was coherent, and plenty of analysts bought it. Bulk up, gain scale, fight Dell and IBM head-on. But one director did not buy it. His name was Walter Hewlett. The founder's son fought the merger from inside the board, calling it crazy to move deeper into the, quote, achingly competitive, heavily commoditized computer world. What followed was a scorched earth proxy war. The company's own management against the family whose name was on the sign. On March 19, 2002, shareholders decided it. Fiorina pulled off the merger despite a cliff-hanging 49% of HP's shareholders voting against it. The company born of a friendly coin flip had just bet its identity on one, and won by the width of the coin. On May 3, 2002, HP acquired Compaq, closing a deal that formed, as one report put it, a $20 billion monster that would do battle with Dell and IBM. The monster underdelivered. Over Fiorina's tenure, roughly 30,000 jobs were cut, and per one CNN Money analysis, the combined companies employed 100 people in 1999 and about 150,000 in 2005. 6 years, 30,000 families, and the headcount ended up essentially where it started. At the company that invented employee-first management, layoffs had become a business unit. On February 8, 2005, the board fired her. Carly Fiorina left with a severance package worth roughly $21.4 million in cash and incentive awards, per SEC filings. Some press reports put the total value, counting future stock, as high as $42 million. 5 months after she walked out, HP announced another 15,200 job cuts. The workers got the pink slips. The architect got the parachute. Whatever the HP way still meant, it did not mean that. What happened next is the part of this story that still doesn't sound real. After Fiorina's ouster, HP's board was leaking. Details of private board meetings kept surfacing in the press, and the new non-executive chairwoman, Patricia Dunn, did what a governance textbook says a chairwoman should do. She ordered an investigation to protect shareholder confidentiality. An unremarkable instinct. Then it left the building. On September 5, 2006, Newsweek revealed what the investigation had become. HP's general counsel, at the behest of chairwoman Patricia Dunn, had contracted security experts who recruited private investigators, and those investigators used a technique called pretexting, impersonating HP's own board members and 9 journalists to obtain their private phone records. The birthplace of Silicon Valley, the company of the HP way, running a spying operation against its own directors and the reporters who covered it. The collapse was immediate. On September 12th, after HP was threatened with prosecution, Dunn stepped down. CEO Mark Hurd succeeded her as chairman. On October 4th, California Attorney General Bill Lockyer filed criminal charges and arrest warrants against Dunn, HP's former chief ethics officer, Kevin Hunsaker, yes, the ethics officer, and 3 outside investigators. On March 14, 2007, the judge in Dunn's criminal case dismissed all charges. Legally, she walked. But her career was over, and so was something less tangible: HP's 50-year reputation as the ethical company. That died in a filing cabinet full of stolen phone records. The man left standing was Mark Hurd, an operations executive, the anti-Fiorina, and by the numbers he delivered: profitability restored, scale expanded, including a $13.2 billion acquisition of electronic data systems in 2008. File that EDS number away. It comes back later, wearing a write-down. Then the board did it again. On August 6, 2010, HP announced Hurd had resigned effective immediately. After outside lawyers investigating a sexual harassment claim found expense account violations and an undisclosed close relationship with a contractor. You can defend the decision on ethics grounds. The board did. But notice the pattern forming. This was now the second proven, profitable era ended abruptly over optics, with no succession plan ready. A company that once kept leaders for decades was now devouring one every few years. And the next one would be the most expensive meal in Silicon Valley history. In September 2010, HP reached outside again and named Leo Apotheker, the former CEO of software giant SAP, as chief executive. His diagnosis was genuinely correct. The PC business was structurally dying, and HP needed to become a software and analytics company. The diagnosis was right. The surgery killed the patient. The instrument was a British software company called Autonomy, founded by Mike Lynch, Cambridge-educated, once dubbed Britain's Bill Gates. In August 2011, HP agreed to acquire Autonomy at $42.11 a share, a premium of around 60% over the market price. Some sources say 64. It was a staggering price, agreed at speed, with minimal due diligence. And then something almost comically dysfunctional happened. In September 2011, after agreeing to the deal but before closing it, HP fired Apotheker, 11 months into the job, and named Meg Whitman CEO. And then, in October 2011, HP closed the deal anyway, buying 87.34% of Autonomy for £5.44 billion, about $10.3 billion at 2011 exchange rates, though later reports put the price as high as $11.7 billion. HP executed the largest bet in its history, using a strategy it had already fired the strategist for. 13 months later, the bill arrived. On November 20, 2012, HP announced an $8.8 billion write-off of Autonomy goodwill, alleging that about $5 billion of it related to accounting improprieties at Autonomy before the sale. Fraud, said HP. We were deceived, and stacked on top of it. The EDS deal from the Hurd years took its own $8 billion write-down. For the fiscal year ended October 31, 2012, HP reported a $12 billion loss against a $7 billion profit the year before. In 2011, this company had peaked at 350,000 employees. Now it was writing off acquisitions worth more than entire decades of the founder's work. Wall Street's prescription for a wounded conglomerate is always the same: cut it in half. On November 2, 2015, Hewlett-Packard split into HP Inc. Netterster, printers and PCs, and Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, with both trading on the New York Stock Exchange. HP Inc. popped 13% on day one. HPE slipped 1.6%. Analysts called it unlocking value. Call it what it was. After 76 years, the company named by a coin flip in a Palo Alto garage ceased to exist. Two businesses kept the letters. Neither kept the thing the letters used to mean. The Autonomy deal outlived the company that made it, and it turned into one of the strangest legal sagas in tech history. In 2018, Autonomy's former finance chief, Sushovan Hussain, was convicted in a U.S. trial of wire fraud and other crimes related to the sale, and sentenced to 5 years in prison. In 2022, Mike Lynch lost a civil trial in London over allegations that he and Hussain had used accounting tricks to inflate Autonomy's revenue before the 2011 sale. The scoreboard looked like vindication for HP. Then came San Francisco. On June 6, 2024, a U.S. jury acquitted Mike Lynch on all 15 criminal charges. 1 count of conspiracy, 14 of wire fraud. A stunning, complete acquittal, 13 years after the deal. Lynch went home to England to celebrate the trial of his life being over. 10 weeks later, on August 19, 2024, the superyacht where he had gathered friends and family to celebrate that acquittal sank off the coast of Sicily. Mike Lynch was killed. Whatever you believe about Autonomy's accounting, sit with the shape of that story. A man spends his last decade fighting an accusation born of HP's worst decision, wins, and dies celebrating the win. Even that did not end it. On July 22, 2025, a UK High Court judge ruled that Hewlett-Packard is owed more than £700 million, about $943 million, by Lynch's estate and Hussain. HP won, but read the judgment, because it cuts both ways. The judge found that HP's claim was always substantially exaggerated, and that the famous $8.8 billion write-down figure was not based on detailed analysis. The number that defined this scandal for over a decade, a court says it was never really a calculation at all. And it still isn't over. In November 2025, HPE's lawyers told London's High Court they're now seeking nearly $1.8 billion from Lynch's estate, including interest, while the estate seeks permission to appeal and argues the interest claim is excessive. A dead man's family, still litigating a 2011 acquisition into 2026. And what of the other half of the old company? In February 2025, HP Incers announced a deal to acquire key AI capabilities from the failed startup Humane, its Cosmos platform, its technical talent, more than 300 patents, for $116 million, less than half the $240 million Humane had raised. Humane's AI PIN had sold 10,000 units against a 100,000-unit target. A small story, but look at the pattern. Nearly 90 years old, and HP is still buying the future instead of building it. Then, on November 26, 2025, HP announced plans to eliminate 4,000 to 6,000 jobs globally by the end of fiscal 2028, part of an AI-driven restructuring targeting $1 billion in cost savings, with $650 million in restructuring costs along the way. This from a company whose fiscal 2025 revenue was $55.3 billion, up 3.2%. Growing and cutting anyway. It's the same move it made in 2002, in 2005, in 2012. Only the technology in the press release changes. Here's the thing about Hewlett-Packard. Every single decision in this story was defensible. Hire a star to fix stagnation. Rational. Merge for scale. Half the shareholders agreed. Investigate the leaks. That's the chair's job. Fire the CEO over ethics. Twice. That's principle. Pivot to software. Correct diagnosis. Split the company. Standard playbook. Each move made sense in the room where it was made. And the sum of them was this. A culture famous for trusting its people became a company that spied on its own board. paid its architects tens of millions on the way out, while cutting tens of thousands on the way down, and spent 13 years suing a man over a number, a judge says, was never based on detailed analysis. The HP way wasn't murdered. It was expensed, one rational line item at a time. The garage is still there. It's a California landmark, privately owned, closed to visitors. Which is about right. Silicon Valley kept the shrine. It just stopped practicing the religion. If this story was worth your time, the next one hits closer to home. An American brand your family trusted with its life, literally, until the day it decided trust was a cost center. Subscribe, and you'll be there when it drops.